Well, there's a trio of Republicans running for the Republican nomination from the primary, which is June 8th, to unseat Barbara Boxer, which is just so important. And she's vulnerable, very, very vulnerable. Chuck DeVore joins us here, Sutherland from the 70th District here in California. Hi, Chuck. Good morning.
Good morning. I thought you were a family show.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry that there's people drive off the road when we play that. I did warn, though, to cover the ears of their kids, it's got to be. I would imagine that if that you and Carly and Tom were all in the same room, you would all of you want this nomination and badly. But I mean, to me, it seems in some ways you have an advantage in that you're an assemblyman. You've seen the damage to our state that comes from Washington. As an assemblyman, you've also you're up against the tide of Republicans that just overwhelm us. The only way we can ever get anything through is a proposition. First of all, tell me, what would you do differently as a U.S. Senator?
Differently than Barbara Boxer?
Yeah, well, I know that it's only a 4-hour show, but give me some highlights.
Yeah, well, first of all, I believe that your oath of office isn't just some vestigial, old-fashioned thing that you don't pay attention to. When you raise your right hand and say that you're swearing an oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, that's a big deal. And if you follow your oath, for example, I don't think you would have voted for something like Obamacare, which I believe is unconstitutional. I don't think you would have voted for TARP, the bailout of Wall Street, which led to the government takeover of 2/3 of the American auto manufacturing industry. It led to the takeover of the largest insurance company in America. These are clearly not the responsibilities of our federal government.
Well,
so I think that's very basic.
Obviously, many of us feel that way, and right now we're battling a case with Arizona and following it closely. Even though we just discovered, going through the California Penal Code, that our officers and law enforcement over here are supposed to do exactly what Arizona is telling theirs to do. There's a lot. California is in a unique position in that we have many of the problems, not of other states, but of countries. For everything from agriculture to defensive borders to law enforcement issues. And, of course, a state with 9 different climates and needs. It really is different here than anywhere else in the country. Let me ask you about Arizona and some of the problems that obviously we have with an encroaching federal government here, and one that really seems to want to control what we do in our own state.
Well, first of all, the Arizona law, to me, is common sense. All the folks did in Arizona was recapitulate federal law and say, okay, here's federal law. We're going to begin to enforce it. And that's why when the Arizona law was first signed into law, I immediately supported it without reservation. Carly Fiorina, one of my opponents, on the day the law passed, actually had 4 kind of nuanced statements, one of which said that the law had origins or in racist overtones. And then she told the Wall Street Journal she didn't support it, and then finally on Monday decided that she would support the Arizona law. For me, it's very clear what Arizona was doing. They were simply saying, here's federal law, we're going to enforce it. Now, if you've got a problem with Arizona law, then clearly you have a problem with federal immigration law.
Yeah, obviously that's one issue. It overwhelms our services. There's the risk, of course, of terrorists coming across the border. And not to mention, it's just not fair to all the people that do it right. You know what I mean? The people that come, whether they're coming from, we had that, it just goes to show you, look at that Pakistani guy that tried to blow up the car in Times Square. He got citizenship. How does a guy like that, from a nation that we are, admittedly, not in concurrence with, the way that they view terrorism, and some would say technically maybe at war since they support terrorists. How does a person like that get citizenship? But many Mexicans who are wanting to come across the border legally and can't get into this country, we deny them. I don't understand that.
Well, that's the whole point of why we need to take a long, hard look at immigration law, but we need to do so from our own terms. In other words, the United States is a sovereign nation. We should very coolly and calmly determine who we want to have enter into our nation, what sort of people, what kind of talent, where should they come from. Most other nations have significant rules and restrictions on who comes into their nation, and it seems like in America we kind of let other people determine that rather than doing what's right for our nation. So that's one thing. You mentioned, of course, terrorism. That's a huge issue as well. Look at how effective the double fence has been on the California-Mexico border.
Right.
It's been so effective that it's driven the illegal immigration traffic over to Arizona, which is why Phoenix has now become the kidnap capital of North America. And I think we need to complete the double fence. We need to push it all the way through from California to the Gulf Coast.
Has Sacramento made an official comment on Arizona's bill?
There has been no official comment that I'm aware of, other than that Democrat leaders, for example, Darrell Steinberg, the Senate President pro tem, condemned the Arizona law in the harshest of terms, again, invoking the specter of racism and acting as if Arizona had somehow created a brand new law out of whole cloth, when in fact all they were doing was restating federal law.
Yeah. I guess, as an assemblyman, you know better than most about how hard it is to unseat labor in this country. It's labor that's brought down Greece. It's labor that's brought down the EU in many ways. It's labor and the pensions and the contracts that we enter in that we cannot afford in tougher economic times that are taking down many aspects of California, San Diego especially. How do you stop it? Literally, what could you do to stop the promises that have been made and continually made to labor by politicians, mostly on the left, in order to curry their favor? How do you stop that?
Well, the first practical part is, of course, getting elected. In 2010, and this year of the Tea Party, and this year of hyper-awareness by the American public as to what is actually going on, we actually have a chance this year. As I've been traveling around the state, I had my 350th appearance last night up in Redding. I'm driving out to San Francisco right now. What I'm finding is that the California public has finally been awakened to what is exactly going on, and they're participating, many people for the very first time in their lives. So that's step number one. Step number two, of course, is you need to look at practical solutions. Now, one practical solution is that for new hires in government, they need to be on a defined contribution, not a defined benefit plan. In other words, something like a 401k, where they have their own account of what they put into that account, and the taxpayer is not going to be on the hook for some massive unfunded liability. Now, there's a very interesting possibility in California that the Attorney General candidate, John Eastman, is looking into, which is that it is illegal to actually give a grant of public funds. And pardon me, when we did the huge retroactive pension increases in the late 1990s, early 2000s, just before the dot-com bubble burst, what we did in effect was grant tens of billions of dollars to the public sector employee unions here in the state of California retroactively. And that may, in fact, be unconstitutional. That may, in fact, be illegal.
Well,
if it is found to be illegal, then we can actually overturn it and go back to the way they were in the 90s.
Somebody's got to be held accountable. It continues to go on, Chuck, and it's just killing us. It's killing us here in San Diego. It's killing us in the state. Who knows how many billions of dollars we're really under the thumb. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Chuck, I hope to talk to you again before June 8th. I appreciate your time. Drive safe on up to San Francisco.
Thank you so much.
Take care again. Chuck DeVore with us. He is running. He's Assemblyman from the 70th District.